Okay, so welcome to the Smart Connector podcast. It's Thursday evening on the Smart Connector group, and I've got a great guest for you tonight, Kevin Whelan. Welcome, Kevin.
Hello, Jane, and what a pleasure to be welcome today.
So, we're going to talk about how business owners can leverage existing assets, in particular their pensions or their company profits, to create lasting wealth tonight. And Kevin is the founder of WealthBuilders, and he's created an easy to follow step by step system to help build multiple streams of recurring income independently of your business, making you truly financially independent. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. So Kevin helps business owners seeking to create wealth independently of their company and their primary asset, if it is their business, as well as helping property experts tap into undiscovered sources of funds for their projects. So I can't wait to get into this, Kevin, because as you know, I have a property business as well as my entrepreneurial training and consulting business. So I'm really excited to have you here tonight, and I just can't wait to get into this. Really
Well,
fantastic topic.
you're one of the few enlightened people, Jane. So, and it's great that you're sharing and getting this message, which is universally based on, I guess, from my perspective, on principles which could be applied whether you're in the UK, whether you're in the US, whether you're in Sri Lanka or Ceylon. You know, it's all things that you can use and practically do something about today that will change the way you build your wealth, to keep that wealth and to pass it on, of course, to the next generation.
Yes, absolutely. That legacy, that's all important, isn't it? That's something that a lot of people think about. So it's interesting that you mentioned Sri Lanka, because we had a conversation before the podcast, because obviously I keep an eye on the stats, and I'm always really interested to see some of the countries where people are picking up on the podcast. And Sri Lanka was one of them. Ghana's been another one. Croatia's another one. Obviously, most of my audience are in the US and the UK. But it is a global medium, podcasting. And so we are going to really get into this, because I know that there are a lot of investors all over the world, or a lot of business owners who are creating wealth, and they're very attracted to the idea of investing in the UK because of our stable legal system and because we're a small island. So property assets are, they're always a good investment really over here, or on the whole, compared to other parts of the UK. So I'm going to shut up really and just let you get on with it, Kevin. So tell us about Wealth Builders. What motivated you to set this up?
Yeah, that's a great question, and really it stems from a businessman's experience, who wasn't me; it was my father, and unfortunately, he died at age 46 in 1985. Tragic. He had a good business. He was running a business of creating agents on North Sea oil rigs, welders and inspectors and divers and a whole raft of things. So successful businessman. And unfortunately, one day he collapsed and died on the oil rig, and which is tragic, of course. And when you're young, as I was at 25, you're touched by that. But things really only kind of get into your mind a little bit later. And two consequences, really. The first one was, it was obvious to us, living a life which had come from working class background in Newcastle upon Tyne in the northeast of England, when my dad was just a shipyard worker, didn't have very much money. It was really a poverty lifestyle. Then over time, when he became a business owner, it worked out terrifically well, and he was making good money, and we could tell our lifestyle had changed. But in one day, it all went. And what
Wow.
it meant was, like many businessmen and women, they think they're invincible. They think they will carry on forever. And at 46, of course, you do. But he died, no will, no life cover to protect the mortgage, no business continuation plan. So when his
Mhm.
business went, there was nobody to take over it. So consequently, it simply died along with him. Now, the consequence for the family wasn't great. The consequence for me was very different. So about 3 years after that, after I'd reflected on it, Jane, we were peas in a pod, genetically. We looked the same, we talked the same, we walked the same. Everybody knew I was my father's son. And as I was reflecting on my career, I was an economist by training, that was my degree. I suddenly kind of thought to myself, hey, if I go when he went, I'm not going to be able to save enough money to do something that's different to what he did. Now, I know he was a great guy. He had good intentions, but bad execution. And this is what I've seen throughout my life since then. So from age of 29, just about, I made a decision never to trade time for money, to build businesses and to build assets and to protect them as I went along and to make sure wherever I could, I would encourage business owners never ever to fall into the continuous traps they fall into, which is one, never really providing any protection for their family if something goes wrong. They almost never make wills. They always want to, and they always think they'll get around to it, but they don't. And the second thing is they put all their time and energy into the business. And if the business goes wrong for whatever reason, and we know there's so many statistics about failed businesses, not that I would want to labor on businesses failing, because many businesses, of course, succeed. But even successful businesses, sometimes the business owner gets trapped in the very business they sought to create freedom from, trapped in
Mhm.
the mesh of doing all the jobs under the sun instead of the thing that they probably craved at the outset. So I spend my life now teaching business owners how to protect their families, how to build wealth and assets inside their business by thinking about their business as a recurring income model. And there are 4 different recurring income models. If you want to dive into that, we could do that. But also to build wealth outside. So while they're making good profit, as my dad was, to shelter that profit and wherever possible, use that profit to build wealth independently. So whatever happens, they're building the business, building wealth, building the business, building wealth. And that way, it kind of takes the pressure off the business as well, because if you're financially independent, we've seen devastation in businesses in recent times, throughout the pandemic. And how many business owners would have been grateful for the knowledge that they had other income streams supporting them, where so many just simply rely on one? And in my experience, one of anything is extraordinarily dangerous.
Yeah, and I can tell from the way that you're speaking about this, and obviously you've related your own experience, Kevin, that you're really, really passionate about this. This is a mission for you. It's not just a business, is it? It's something that you really care about.
It is, and sometimes, and I talk about this with my team, that I obsess about helping people. Whether I get paid or not is not relevant. Of course, we want to commercialize it, but if I meet anyone, I'll do my best in the moment that I'm with them to help them discover something that could make them better, safer, and maybe even enjoy the wealth building experience rather than finding they have to wait till the end when actually, so many businesses are not sold. Many people think their business is their wealth, but they don't sell them. In of 5 million businesses in the UK, only 5,000 of them ever get to sell to get entrepreneurs relief, which is £1 million. The average value of a sale of a business in the UK, I don't know what it is in other countries, was less than £100,000, Jane, and
Mhm.
nobody's going to get wealthy on that. So can you imagine putting your life's work into something for 100 grand check at the end? When you're weary, not wealthy.
Yeah, as you said, it's not a great return really for all those decades of laboring, or even if it's just a few years, because it's really hard work building a business from scratch. And everybody that has done it knows that to be true. There are no shortcuts. The enjoyment and the freedom come later on the whole. So yeah, fantastic. So let's talk about these pillars then, Kevin. You mentioned them earlier. So what are those pillars to you? What do they mean?
Well, just to be clear on the language, so when we're talking about building wealth,
Mhm.
we talk about there are 7 and only 7 ways you can build wealth. In other words, it's an asset. What is an asset? An asset, I believe, not an economics definition or an accountancy one, is something you own that is not you. So it can't really be your job. It puts money into your bank account while you're asleep. That money can be passed on to your loved ones or good causes. You do not have to be there for the money to be there. So you don't have to show up, but the money keeps showing up. And there are 7 ways to do that. And most people in their life, even if they don't know it, intuitively have 3. They've got a home they live in, which could create income, but mostly they don't. They normally have some kind of retirement fund or pension or whatever language you would use in another country, some kind of tax privileged fund used specifically for retirement purposes. And people have some money in the bank or stock market, generally stock market. And my experience is it pretty much ends there. Some people will have a business, but it will never, ever be sold. And they know that, self-employed people, plumbers and dentists and doctors and so on, they'll never have a business to pass on because it depends entirely on them. There's four. The fifth one is a portfolio of property, which of course you know about and I know about. The sixth is intellectual property, so creating value from the very act of you creating your own knowledge and your own knowledge base, and the whole raft of ways to do that. Not just book authors, of course, but courses and materials and speaking and memberships and a whole range of things. And seven is joint ventures or collaborations where you bring something to the table, somebody else brings something to the table, and you share collaboratively in the value, which can be a long-term stream of income. And certainly my experience from all of the people I've dealt with and thousands of people over the years, and our ambition is to help 50,000 business owners to get financially independent, is most of them underplay their business and think that their business will be the winner because they don't have enough money in the other assets they've got. And in my experience is that's almost never the case. So few businesses sell, and most businesses simply the seller leaves it too late, or there isn't enough value there, or they sell when they're ill and they don't get the maximum value. So only a small proportion of businesses ever really sell for value, as I mentioned, about 1% of businesses.
Really?
Yeah.
Is it 1%?
1%, yeah. So, unless you're in the top 1%, 5,000 businesses out of 5 million, unless you're in the top 1%, your business probably is going to underperform your value. And that's a tough gig for people to acknowledge, that if my business doesn't have some core ingredients, and I normally talk about them as three core ingredients. I call it the kind of power plug. The three in the UK, we have a 3-pin plug, don't we, for power? In other countries,
Yeah.
But anyway, the three things are being outstanding in a niche, so creating a niche business and be absolutely brilliant at it. Number two is having a strong and robust recurring income stream in the business. And number three, the business needs to be able to work without you as the owner being inside the business doing any of the work. And if you can do that, then you can create value from your business. And whether you sell it, whether you pass it on to your team through either an MBO or an employee ownership trust or some other methodology of passing it on, or your family, you've got some value in there that you can have the money repeat and repeat and repeat. And I've got businesses that are long ago simply don't do any work, but they keep sending me royalty checks or licensing checks or commission checks. And I'm happy that I received them. But I'm glad that I took the time to think it through and didn't ever get caught up in the doing of a business. And in fact, you said earlier on, most people invent a business and create a business, but it's just as easy now to buy a business. So all the lessons have been learned, all the infrastructure is there, but the business owner themselves need to sell. Because they haven't structured it well enough and they left it too late. And you can step in and help other business owners and take over their databases, their client bank, their recurring income that they simply need to get some value today. So, and you can do it very ethically and in a way that's quite genuinely a win-win for both sides. So they're the sort of, the areas we've just touched on there. So the 7 pillars, 7 independent ways to build wealth, the 3-pin plug for what are the ingredients inside a business. And if you wanted to, we could get into the 4 different recurring income models you can use inside a business, so that, because you need a recurring income. So there are 4 different types of recurring income. So we could go there if you like.
Yeah. So recurring income is so important. Recurring, predictable income, because that is really what creates value in a business, isn't it? So I would definitely love to go there, Kevin. So, hit us with it.
Yeah, 4 different methods of recurring income. And Jane, you're absolutely right. I mean, the predictability means predictable profit, so you get a premium price for a recurring income business. If you had two businesses turning over 1 million, but one was automatically coming in every month, and the other was the business owner having to put in infrastructure to create the business every time, and having to do the whole thing again in the next cycle, the whole thing again. The recurring income model will be worth 7 or 8 times more than a standard business model. So it's
Yes.
really important to think about recurring income. The first method of recurring income, they're really quite easy, is just to think about whatever business you're in. If you've got a product, can you auto ship, auto deliver, have auto ordered some form of a product?
Yeah.
And anybody can think of that. I mean, and I don't know what you have in your life. I tell you what I have in mine is wine.
Oh,
you know.
yeah.
So I auto buy wine, and I
Yeah.
love buying my wine. I'm a wine connoisseur. I love wine. So I don't mind buying it. And the people who supply the wine to me, they know they're getting an order from me consistently. I don't have to do anything. They just do it. That's an example of a great business. And there are many others that where the product is just auto delivered, straight away to make it so easy for the buying. Have you got experience of that, Jane?
Yes, absolutely. So, when I think about my bank account, what goes out of my bank account? Well, I've got Netflix, I've got Spotify,
Very good.
I've got David Lloyd, the gym, and I've got some skin creams. So I'm very fond of like Holland and Barrett Snell Gel Serum. So they've got a
Okay,
piece of my recurring revenue. Yeah, for sure. And
perfect.
yeah, and absolutely. So definitely lots of like mini subscriptions, and I think that's definitely is something that I don't even question.
Right. And there are some businesses, bigger businesses, that focus specifically on that, and even funds that focus on buying companies where products are pretty much bought under all economic circumstances. And certainly, Warren Buffett is a great exponent of that. Except instead of just buying knowing which companies are selling the products, he ends up buying the companies, doesn't he? Really? Uh, Sometimes
Yeah,
easy owned, so not a bad outcome, which is why the wealth is there. It's not just buying funds; it's owning the companies. The second
yes.
is auto delivery of service.
Yeah,
So is there a service that you have, or service that you have provided? It's not a product; it's a service. So what is there you could do there? Well, of course, you could think easily like contracts for service, or
excuse me.
contracts for delivery, or contracts to keep dogs quiet. There's a whole range of different things that you can do to deliver a service. And I will encourage business owners to think, well, if you're a service provider, how could you provide some element of contractual so that you start to move from 100% you're trading time for service to 95 to 90 to 85 to 80 working on contract? And how many ways can you do that? And if you've got a service business, could you provide an automatic product? If you've got a product business, could you provide an automatic service? And often the two will go together. So usually an easy way to spot how people could do that just by using other examples. And auto services, certainly. I know my wife has our ovens cleaned, at a certain point, or the house alarm is automatically serviced, and a whole raft of other things in business, of course, that we do, like our technology, and so forth. And so, there you go. So that's two. The third is some form of a membership business, some form of subscription service. That's more like Netflix, but I have membership programs within Wealth Builders, and those memberships are renewing subscriptions. And I love those because it means if you're providing a service that needs to be renewed, then you have to constantly stand up and deliver value. Because if you don't deliver the value, they won't renew. So it keeps you on your toes as a business. So membership businesses, well, David Lloyd would be one. Um,
For
the
sure.
gym membership, and whatever other ways that people can imagine that they could create some kind of subscription service within their business, or actually create a business that is all about subscriptions.
Amazon Prime.
Yeah, well, quite 20 quid or whatever it is now, you know. So, and the fourth is what I call a gateway. And a gateway is where you see an idea, you see a niche, but you see people kind of operating in the niche independently in their own kind of small little silos. And then when you look at the whole of that industry, and you could say, well, what if I could curate the message? What if I could take their product, their product, their product, their product, their service, and create a portal or a gateway that people went through, that you referred to those companies and they paid you a small amount back. And as a result of that, you get a very, very handsome profit and a solid business with virtually no cost and virtually no infrastructure. You just have to think about it. And probably the best version of that I've seen is moneysavingexpert.com.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Martin Lewis, brilliant. He's just a fantastic gateway. He's got an incredible, presence and incredible reputation. But if you look through the business, every time you click on a link, he gets paid, 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 and he keeps getting paid. And that's a good business model. And
That is a good business model.
yeah, there are so many great gateways that are out there. I was talking to one of my clients earlier this afternoon who's absolutely, completely pet mad. You know, her whole business is training people how to work with animals in business and so on. And she was saying, you know, the biggest problem she's had in the pandemic is finding places to stay and eat where she can take her pet. And I said, well, this must be a problem hundreds, if not thousands of people are struggling with. Couldn't you create a gateway to that? And she said, well, yeah, I'm going to go and look at that and try and find every place where, you know, there's a doggy hotel or a dog-friendly restaurant or a dog-friendly or a cat-friendly this or that. Normally, in her case, it's dogs. And obviously, you're a dog lover and I am too. How do you do that to create a gateway that you see all of these people just doing their own little things and then create a shop window that you can send people to go through and you're getting a share of everybody else's revenue? So that's
Yeah. I mean, I do that to a certain extent in my program because I help people create, I call it authority assets to explode their growth. So what that means is I help them to market themselves.
okay.
And so I have, some affiliate programs that I recommend that are just tech products. So it's the opportunities are there, aren't they, these days, in a way that they never have been before.
Yeah, exactly. So instead of inventing a business, you can buy a business or you just look at what other businesses are doing and you create a gateway. So it's never been easier to be an entrepreneur in today's society. And in fact, this is a surprising statistic. More new businesses were created in the pandemic, in the last month of the pandemic, than at any time in history.
Wow, really?
Yeah, in this country, nearly 750,000 new businesses were started.
That is incredible, actually.
You know, people had the time, they begin to see opportunities. Now, we know there's a high failure rate in business, and we know the average revenue businesses in the UK is less than £100,000 per annum, and probably the same in other countries too. You could pro-rata that. So few businesses, you know, breach the 7-figure mark, and even fewer breach the 8-figure mark. But this is the key things to understand is how can you get your business to 7 figures and beyond? And you can't really do that just by thinking on your own, doing your own thing. You've got to think about how you create multiple ways of being able to create auto service, auto product, membership, gateway, as well as having a robust business of your own where you can scale it without you having to be there, working it, shipping it, controlling it, managing it, hiring for it, and everything else. That all the jobs that our business owner colleagues in the world have to do when everybody else who's got a normal job just has one job, whereas they've got dozens of jobs.
Yeah, and I love this because it's really about leverage, isn't it, Kevin? It's about the world is full of leveraged opportunities and people who are working in their business and they're doing everything themselves. And I know people that do this, and I always say to them, just stop doing it, because there are other people who would love to do what you do at a very reasonable price that would free up your time to do the higher value work and actually get to those recurring revenue models that are the foundation of wealth.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. And we're certainly seeing much, much more work being done in property, where so much of the dog work, the leg work rather, I got dogs on the brain there for a moment. The leg work is done by VAs, who are trained in the Philippines or Sri Lanka or anywhere else, where they're doing an outstanding job, but the cost of providing that service is, once it's carefully documented and easy to follow in a step-by-step, automated process, it can be followed, and therefore you can get so much more leverage on your time. And everybody's realizing that these days, and there are whole businesses created to help other business owners kind of divest themselves of the very things that are holding them back, so they can concentrate on the higher level thinking and the higher level activities.
Indeed. So let's get on to talking about investing business profits and about property, Kevin. Love to hear your views on that.
Well, of course, businesses who get through that initial kind of challenge and they start to make good profits, one of the issues that I always see is business owners make profit, they pay the corporation tax or whatever tax they pay on the profit, but then they leave the money in the bank. And they leave the money in the bank, certainly in the UK, because they don't want to pay further taxes by withdrawing the money, or they want to keep it for a rainy day. And we know that they're not getting any money at all from having it on deposit, but they're so reluctant or so unaware of the opportunities to turn that money into real sources of profit. And there are a number of ways to do that. Of course, one of them is to look at property. So if you're a business and you operate from a piece of property, now increasingly now people are doing less of that, but if you do, could you become both the landlord and the tenant? So instead of you paying to a landlord and building the wealth of the landlord, you buy the property, you either through your profit or through pension, and we'll come back to pension, I guess, because it's much more tax efficient. Then you can be paying the rent that you're paying to a third party to yourself, and then the money goes in a virtuous circle. So there's so many different ways. That's just one, using property that you're already occupying in your business. I was talking to one of my doctor clients who has a business providing services, and she's looking now to find a property so that she can operate her practice within that property, but then allow other practitioners to operate from the same property. So they're providing almost a wellness center and getting a value by, her working with kind of related services, almost a shop window herself, and creating services for chiropractors or, any kind of specific practitioner in the medical or dental field. And she can create an income from that, but at the same time, it's a very easy patient referral service. So that's just one example. There are so many more, including just buying property to build an additional wealth stream. So buying commercial property to rent it out and be a landlord for its own sake.
And of course, yeah, so commercial property also has some tax benefits, doesn't it? If you're a business owner, I don't fully understand all of this, but I know that you understand it really well. And if you have a pension, you can invest your pension in commercial property, can't you, as well?
You can indeed. I'll talk pensions in just one moment, but I think the dog's enjoying the content and definitely wants to get into it. But certainly property, whether it's just owned by the company, sometimes it's better to be owned by a pension fund, actually, because in every country there are tax reliefs available for people building retirement funds. It's definitely this here in the UK. You get relief from your corporation tax, which is give or take 20%. So if you make a profit and pay tax at 20%, but you redirect that money and put it into a pension fund, you're getting all of that tax back. So it's like, you're now investing gross money, not net money, which you would do if you took the money out and bought property personally. And when you do that, the pension fund is also growing completely free of capital gains taxes and inheritance tax. So the compounding effect of getting tax back and then zero tax on anything, any growth and profit you make, means it's very easy to start to build a very substantial fund, all free of taxes, to support the business. So the money can be loaned back to the business. So in certain pensions, certainly in the UK, certain kind of business owner pensions, they can lend money back to the business. So if the business isn't doing so well, they can lend money to it. The business is doing great things and wants to expand, it can lend money to the business, or it can just simply keep buying assets and with family members as well. So they're building wealth from the business, but supporting the wider family. And we spend a lot of time here in the UK helping business owners understand that, whereas most business owners don't like the word pension very much, do they? They kind of see it as old-fashioned language and do not disturb this money till I'm 65, but they want access to the money now, really, which is understandable. In difficult times, they want to part company with the money, but if you know you can get access to it now and get access to it later, then it can work.
I think people are just reluctant to embrace things that they don't understand, and I think that there's just natural fear there. And I'm thinking about my father, for example, who, he would never have thought ever to invest his pension. He had a pretty decent pension, but he would not have thought about doing it simply because I think there was quite a lot of fear there. There's a fear of loss of control, and I think the other thing is that if you're a business owner and you've been working in a business that is unrelated to property, then a lot of the time you don't really understand property, and you don't really know. For example, I mean, I'm not really in commercial property. I wouldn't know what's a good investment in commercial property or not, because you have to learn about this stuff, don't you? So that's where you put property investors together with business owners, don't you, Kevin?
Yes, I mean, look, at the end of the day, we're all trying to build wealth for ourselves, and the whole value of this is we're talking back to those 7 pillars. And in order to take control and be wealthy, you've got to start with education. So you have to want to learn more, so that equips you to be able to do more. And from our perspective, excuse me, the best way to learn is not to learn academically, because you could learn about a car or a small airplane in a book, but it doesn't mean you can fly one. It doesn't mean you can drive it. It means you need to see what's going on. You need to touch it, feel it, experience it. And our way to do that is to have a community of business owners, and there's some 5,000 of us now. And we're business owners who are looking to share knowledge and experience with others, so that people feel in a safe environment. So if they want to learn about certain aspects of property, they can go see it. And nobody's hiding and nobody's protecting like you normally see in business owner competition. We're seeing a whole community of, I suppose, free-spirited, challenging individuals, mavericks, and like most of us are, to try to show other people what they're doing, and they feel proud of that. And almost always they're doing so collaboratively, not with a view to making profit, but just with a view to sharing information. And I'm proud to be kind of part of that community here in the UK. And I've not really seen much of that in other countries, but I'd be thrilled if there are some. I certainly got invited to something similar in India online, which was fascinating. So, the whole cultural thing of sharing is definitely there, as long as there's somebody to act as the kind of glue or the shop window to allow that to take place. And I know you do a bit of that, and I certainly do.
Definitely. So the interesting thing is that a lot of what we've talked about is very unique to British taxation laws and, the historical situation here in the UK in terms of property values, and the fact that we're an island and that property is a very, very good investment here in the UK. But how about if I have an audience of business owners across the world? So how about if you're somebody who's been making some profits in your business, but you're somewhere else in the world, say the US. So about 50% of my audience are in the US.
Mhm.
Can they access your community?
I don't think they could access my community specifically because we're about sharing knowledge internally within, so that you can go and see it and get an experience. But actually, the principles of the seven assets, of owning a property, having a retirement fund, investing in the stock market, having some investment in property of some kind, doesn't have to be on an island, creating intellectual property, having a business with recurring income, and joint ventures is transcendent. It doesn't matter which country you're in, the
Yeah.
principles work. So somebody else could become the shop window. Somebody
Yes.
else could create that community where they are. We certainly know in America there's the the um, the Roth pension and uh, there are other pensions in the US that allow you to take control of your funds and make decisions about what you do, and whether that's stock market investing, but without necessarily paying the fees traditionally either in the UK or Wall Street, or whether it's ETFs, exchange traded funds, whether it's gold, whether it's other commodities, whether it's cryptocurrency. We're agnostic on what people do. We take a holistic view. We peddle nothing. We preach about nothing other than principles, and therefore those principles work whichever country you're in. And so I think people could create their own community, or they could certainly tap into ours to get insights into what we're doing to copy and replicate something in another country, whether it's the US, Australia, or anywhere.
Yeah, well, as you said, those are universal principles, and I think particularly now, there really has never been a better time in history to own a business as opposed to working for other people. So, this is a problem, if you like, an issue or an opportunity that so many of us will be facing at some point, if not now.
Well, I think one of the biggest sections of our community now growing are the kind of high income executives
Uh-huh.
who getting into their late 40s, early 50s, kind of seeing how much they've given of themselves in their career, seeing that their careers have been put under threat. They know they don't have the control. They want something different. They've been working long enough now to want and appreciate that.
Yeah.
Don't know how to do it. So we're creating pathways for policemen, for doctors, for C-suite executives, all sorts of different types, to give them an individualized path already trodden by other people who've been there. So although this is an exercise or a podcast focused specifically on entrepreneurs, but entrepreneurship is just leveraging value. It's just creating more value. And you can be an employee today and an entrepreneur tomorrow. And certainly there's a whole raft of people who move into property because it's an easy asset to replicate, and they move and create limited companies, they create businesses, and they create opportunities for themselves, keeping a job and being an entrepreneur at the same time. So I think the principle of being able to do other things and gradually ease out of trading time for money in your job, or ease out of trading time for money in your current business, can be done irrespective of whatever country you're in.
Well, absolutely, and some of my clients are also employed, but they are also entrepreneurs, so it's very, very common for people to have a job and to have, well, call it a side hustle, but a lot of my clients come to me because they have, knowledge and wisdom that they want to monetize, that they've built up over a period of years, so they have a skill set, and they realize that there is a demand for that skill set that is not necessarily being rewarded in their current position. So they have some time outside of their job and they want to know how to do that. And that's what I help them do. So as you said, they might come to you because they want to build maybe a property portfolio, or they want to leverage property assets, or get some advice on their pensions or whatever. And they'll come to me because they want to build a business online and develop a personal revenue stream that is really based around their wisdom and expertise.
Yeah, very
So,
nice. Yeah, I like that.
yeah, fantastic. So so what would you say the challenges are, the main challenges are with your clients, Kevin? When they do come to you, I mean, I know we've talked a little bit about it, but do they kind of, is there a common theme other than what we've already talked about?
Yes, there is. And I suppose, the reason why we talk about an easy to follow step-by-step process,
Hmm.
which is the wealth builder journey. And the reason we focus on that and make it very clear and easy to follow is because, you mentioned yourself, it's never been easier or better to be an entrepreneur. And that's because with the advent and the speed of technology, there's so much information, there's a deluge of information. And that creates its very own problem, which is the overwhelm that
Yeah.
people feel when they're looking to build their wealth, often because they've come from a focused position, whether it's in their business or in their job, as you mentioned before, then they don't know what they don't know. And because they've been good at what they do, and often, very specific skill set, they tend to either try and be perfect when it's impossible to be perfect. You just got to
Hmm.
get going and you improve your skills later, or they get just overwhelmed with, well, could I do this or could I do that? Should I do property or should I do crypto? Should I do this kind of property or should I do a business? Should I do it? And they go round in circles and circles and circles. And the confused mind always ends up in the status quo. And the status quo, or the comfort zone, nothing ever really grows there, just wasted hope and wasted energy and frustration. And that's what I see. So what we try and do is pull people out of that vortex, rescue them from the whirlpool, and say, look, here's a path that the people have followed. Go talk to them. They'll tell you what they've done. See what you think. It accelerates you on your journey. And then if you
Yeah.
like what they're doing, we'll show you how to do it. If you don't like it, we'll connect you to somebody else and show you what they do. And it's almost like an intellectual shortcut to help people find a place they can start to build one aspect of their wealth. We know there are multiple, but if they can start somewhere with baby steps, I've just become a granddad for the first time, and my young grandson just started walking, right?
Oh.
Little baby steps. Now,
Oh.
once he's got those steps, he's never going to go back to crawling. And this is the essence of it. A little bit of momentum moves people forward. When you move forward, you change your view. When you change your view, you expand your capability, you expand your network, you expand your mind. And when you do that, you'll not go back. And I don't think I've ever seen anybody move from a place of trading time for money when they discover a wealth building journey. They never go back and say, you know what, I'm going to stop this wealth building lark and go and get a job. They just don't do it.
Yeah, that is really, really powerful. And I think that point that you made about overwhelm, baby steps, just actually learning and then never looking back, they're all really important points. Definitely. And I think also what happens to people in midlife, because obviously, many of your clients, as you said, they will have hit their 40s or their 50s and thought, right, okay, I'm in this job, but I'm not building wealth. I am just taking a salary or whatever, and
Yeah.
I've got my pension. But I think also one of the things that happens with that group is they also don't like to go back to being a beginner, because being a beginner is uncomfortable. I've
Mm.
noticed that with people that they've developed, if they've risen to relatively senior levels, um, it can feel almost too much to be in that taking those baby steps again. So I do think it does make a big difference if you've got somebody who is a confident leader, if you like, who can just take them by the hand and say, you don't need to go there, you can go here. It's just giving them those shortcuts, isn't it?
Mm. I mean, I like the way you framed it for yourself, that you're helping people to discover how to bring the mountain of value they've already created intellectually, but
Yeah.
often they don't see it. And if you can pull it out of them, we do the very same thing. And we do, we talked about leverage a lot, but there are 5 forms of leverage, and we always talk about FIRST, financial leverage, intellectual, relationship, systems, and time. And
Aha.
the first thing we do is focus on their intellectual leverage. So what are you already outstanding at? What are you brilliant at now? Where have you added value in your job? Where have you added value in your business? What are you just great at? And what's the best asset that will enable you to carry that skill set and move it forward, so you don't become a newbie, you don't become a baby, you don't become a beginner, and
Mhm.
lose all of that credibility that you fought years. And particularly that is entirely more relevant in my experience of alpha males, more so than females, who seem to be much more open and humble about it. But more often than not, it's just my experience. I'm not being sexist here against the guy, but in more often than not, they're the hardest people to take with you on a wealth journey, because they're a bit defensive about the position they've already achieved.
That's really interesting. I can't really comment in that respect, being a female myself. I
That's
go,
not.
"Yeah, we know it all." Yeah, we're open then, I can't say that, but, I think what happens is people get defensive when they feel unsure, don't they?
Yeah, that's true.
And I think that's really what happens because, as you said, if people they've done things a certain way for a certain length of time, and then they realize that it's time for a change, then that can make them feel uncertain and insecure. And then that's when the protecting behaviors come in and they will get defensive or they will get resistant. And it is important to understand that, look, people don't like change, people like certainty. And when you are introducing change, then you're creating waves, aren't you? And there's just a level of discomfort with that. And arguably, I suppose you could say, well, perhaps we women have had a longer history of having to deal with change, lots of different changes throughout our lives, changes of roles and having to be the caretaker, children, and then going back into the workplace. And it's a lot more fluid, I think. So maybe that's the answer.
Well, equally, I won't comment on that. But what I can say, though, there's a curious. I take your point about certainty, okay, but there's a curious realization that happens when I talk to people about an over reliance on one thing. And I mentioned that at the beginning, that
Yeah.
anything, when you're relying on one thing, you've got a single point of failure. And more often than not, the single point of failure I see when people are building wealth traditionally, especially in jobs, is an over reliance on the stock market. The
Aha.
stock market seems to be the place where their pensions end up, where their
Yeah.
investments end up. And then when they're thinking about their longer term and they're looking to create certainty from an asset that's fundamentally uncertain, there is
Yes.
cash flow. The only certainty going on there is the fees that are being withdrawn by the institutions.
Yes.
This gets my blood boiling, and I try and help people reduce those fees, understand how the stock market works, and show them how to protect themselves against the downfalls and the downturns, but how to also then learn to build other assets in addition to the stock market. But most people feel like they want to delegate their money to a third party because somehow they must know better. But if you really want to leave a great legacy, you can't delegate, because if you delegate, that turns into abdication. If you do that, you're teaching your children absolutely nothing. And one of the things that I've done about that is created a new program coming out in January called WealthBuilders for Families. And this
Uh-huh.
is bringing financial literacy into the home. It's
Oh,
teaching parents how to teach about money what the schools just aren't doing. And it's going to be a fascinating insight of children from 6 to 18, how to engage, communicate, play, involve, and share knowledge and insights, so that children of all ages, and we've engaged with a children's author and a teacher and myself, and we're all collaborating to try and bring this message. And I think when people get that and they realize, crumbs, I'm not a good teacher, then they'll want to take care of learning some of these lessons so their children don't fall into the very traps that they are falling into, like my father fell into, and like so many other are falling into. So the stock market is a very, very dangerous place, and we teach people how to minimize the risk, minimize the cost, and diversify away from the stock market. Not exclusively, not saying the stock market doesn't have a role, it does, but it doesn't have the exclusive role that it seems to have right now. And that's often a place of defensiveness, not just from the advisors who want to preserve and protect their income stream,
Yeah.
but for sure, but also from people who think, well, surely if there was a better way, I'd know about it. Just that you're not told what's necessarily best for you if it's best for the industry to keep making its money. And technology's brought the cost of managing money down, but unfortunately, the fees haven't gone along with that. If they had, we'd be paying fractions of 1%, not between 1 and 2%. And typically in the UK, it's 2%. And if the average return in the stock market is, say, 6 or 7, say it's 6 for the sake of an argument, that's a third of your money going to an institution. And it's not just you're losing a third, it's you're losing the loss of the compounding on that third for decades and decades and decades and decades.
Oh,
And
absolutely,
we've
absolutely.
got
I
to
mean,
try out to educate people on why they should stop thinking that way.
totally. I mean, what you're saying resonates so much. I mean, my father was, he put all of his money with in the stock market. He just because, as you said, I think he just thought, well, that's not something that I need to know about. It's not my thing, and I need to get an advisor for this. And I'm totally with you. I think people need to develop financial literacy and they need to understand investment for themselves. And I think it's the opportunity has never been greater to do that and to have those choices and to build those residual incomes that give people freedom and choice. So, yeah, I just wanted to thank you so much for such a fascinating podcast interview, Kevin. It's just been fantastic to have you here tonight. So refreshing, so much wisdom that you've shared, and really been great. So how would our viewers and our listeners be able to get hold of you? Because I'm sure that some of them will after tonight.
Well, thank you for that, and thank you for your kind words. So, my business is called Wealth Builders, all one word. So, wealthbuilders.co.uk. Got a podcast called Wealth Talk, so all one word, and we've got 130 episodes now. So, I'm going to invite you on my podcast at some point, Joan.
Love it.
So that'd be great. And anybody can just look up my ugly mug and find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, or whatever. So Kevin Whelan or Kevin J. Whelan, you'll find me there and reach out and say, you heard me in Sri Lanka or anywhere else, and you'd like to perhaps find out a bit more about Wealth Builders for families if you've got children yourself, or there's just something that you would like to read more. We've written books, videos, and podcasts and audio files of all kinds to help people. We obsess about giving away free stuff because we think if you give enough free, then people will gravitate when they're ready to start taking action.
Indeed. Well, thank you again, Kevin. And I'll really look forward to coming on your podcast as well. And I'll look forward to being in touch, seeing you again soon.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.